Fox News alert, multiple American casualties in eastern Afghanistan today. The number of casualties and the extent of the injuries has not yet been released by U.S. officials. However, one U.S. military official telling the Associated Press that the U.S. and Afghan soldiers were, quote, engaged by direct firing. Now, this is happening as NATO is reportedly considering a troop withdrawal in Afghanistan. The New York Times reporting several members of the alliance are seeking to pull their forces from the war-torn country after the Trump administration indicated its own plans to reduce the U.S. military presence there. General Jack Keane is a retired four-star general, chairman at the Institute for the Study of War, and a Fox News senior strategic analyst. General Keane, good to have you on this very important Saturday afternoon.
Good to be here, Artel.
Thank you. So you've got U.S. and Afghan troops attacked in Afghanistan, engaged in direct firing. What does this tell you, General Keane, about the state of things on the ground, and should this cause concern for the safety of our troops there?
Well, direct firing is simply close combat using the assault rifles that our troops are carrying, and the enemy also uses rocket-propelled grenades, and that's the nature of what this combat is. Our forces are there to enable the 300,000 Afghan forces do the large amount of the fighting. We have a small counterterrorism unit that's involved in these kinds of engagements. We don't know the nature of the circumstances surrounding this, but a couple things we do know. One, Nangarhar province has always been a contested province. Taliban operate there as well as ISIS, and we don't know who this conflict was with in terms of which group. Secondly, the Taliban issued instructions. Remember back a number of months when peace negotiations were broken off, the Taliban issued instructions to their tactical commanders inside of Afghanistan to up operations against the United States forces and try to leverage as many casualties against U.S. forces who are assisting the Afghans in the local fight. And it gives you a sense of what their intent is in terms of their commitment to peace when they're trying to increase the level of violence against our forces. What they want us to do is obviously just give up and walk out of Afghanistan, and that would be a victory for them.
Pardon me, I don't think President Trump will just walk away and allow them to have that sort of victory. Meanwhile, as you know, President Trump's administration is trying to finalize a peace deal with the Taliban. So should that peace deal be put on hold? I mean, what should the Trump administration and the U.S. military do next as the most immediate step to resolve this?
Well, no one's going to interfere too much with peace negotiations. I've always been highly suspicious of this because the United States is negotiating with the Taliban leadership, and no one is talking to the Afghan leadership, which runs the country. After all, what the Taliban's motivation is to do is to overthrow that government in the country, and that's who they should be negotiating to. So what will come out of this will, at best, would be some kind of interim step if there is some negotiated settlement, which doesn't stop the war because they have to talk to the Afghan government.
So, but is that happening? Because that was one of the questions lingering. Is there too much talking with the Taliban and not enough inclusion with the Afghan government?
Well, I've always believed that to be the case. What we're trying to do, what our negotiating team is trying to do, is fashion a settlement with the Taliban that will, one of the principal conditions will be for them to start negotiations with the Afghan government. But we know for a fact that the Taliban, all they want is eventually to overthrow that government. They've never given up their desire for that. They're not looking about sharing power. 85% of the people, Artel, reject the Taliban. They've been rejecting them for 18 years in continuous surveys. This is the most unpopular insurgency that I've ever been aware of in history. So, yeah, they're not interested in a real political settlement. What they really want to do is overthrow the government.
So then how does that impact troop reduction?
Well, General Miller, who runs our forces and the NATO forces in Afghanistan for more than a year, has been analyzing and came up with a recommendation to reduce our forces to around 8,600 from what was 14,000 when he began is now 12,000. But we didn't declare that because negotiations were ongoing, and we didn't want to give up something for nothing in return.
So where are we now, though?
Well, I think the administration is pretty close to reducing those forces. Listen, what Miller is saying to us, I don't need those forces. I want to get them out of here. And the administration, likely not seeing a deal being made, will probably just go ahead and unilaterally withdraw them, and that'll precipitate a withdrawal in kind, or at least a reduction in kind, from NATO. When we increase forces, NATO increase forces. When we reduce them, our NATO allies will reduce them proportionally to what we're doing as well.
Okay, so that doesn't alarm you that NATO is following suit?
Not at all.
Okay. General Keane, I have to leave it there. Always appreciate your analysis, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, good talking to you, Artel.
Likewise. We'll be right back.